Ali Akbarian, your resident road safety expert from Mobility Engineering, back again for another Q&A. Thank you very much for tuning in. We love you and we love those questions that you keep sending in. Please keep them coming in. And as we always say, hit that subscribe pillar, or button should I say, that looks a bit like this pillar that's down there somewhere, and help us get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. We'll love you for it, and we'll keep those videos coming in appreciation. Okay, so on to today's question. So today's question is around public transport and travelling on public transport. I don't have any big buses here at our assessment centre, so I can't show you too much demonstration. We're going to use a little bit of our imagination and hope for the best. So the question is, what are the laws and regulations around travelling on public transport and using any of the features or the restraints and functions on the public transport vehicles? So what we're going to talk about in public transport are the large public transport buses and also trains. So with trains, they're generally fairly simple. You'll have access ramps that a station attendant will have to come help you with in most cases, and then they can help you onto the train. And generally there is an area on the train where you can sit that either you might have to fold the seats up, or it'll just be an area, or a tram should I say, an area where you can sit. Most of the time there is no restraints of any kind or any kind of tie downs. In some cases you might find there might be something that hooks onto your wheelchair or just helps a little bit of stability, but most of the time we haven't really seen that much stuff out there to help you secure. So the best thing is you need to secure with is basically your brakes, and you just sit there and in a train no one else is using restraints. That's not really that kind of environment, and so yeah, you basically just travel that way. In terms of buses are a little bit more complex, but not really. So buses can get complex because there's different sizes of buses. You've got smaller buses like the 20-seat buses, and then you've got the big 50, 60-seat buses that are like the public buses. So when we're talking about buses in this conversation, in this video, we're talking about the big public buses, not the little ones. So the little ones, anything under 20 seats, there are whole different laws, and if there's restraints there, you've got to use them, and the organisations and carers and all that might be responsible. So we're not going to talk into depth about that. We're just going to talk about public transport, big buses, right? So big buses often will have some kind of fold-out ramp, or they might lower down so you can get in and out of them relatively easy. And then you go into the front section, and there's generally an area, depending on the state and depending on the setup, there is an area that sometimes is very clearly marked out. Sometimes there's like a pad, which is like a more non-slip pad or something that's better for grip. And there's an area specifically for the wheelchair occupant. In some buses, and I'm seeing it in more and more modern buses, you're starting to see sort of restraint systems there that are relatively easy to use, and basically you can restrain your wheelchair in place. You're not really seeing many seatbelts, and again, big public buses typically don't have seatbelts, but you are starting to, I've seen a couple here and there are some features, or should I say, some products on the market that are made for buses, and that have like wheelchair restraints and seatbelts and things like that, and we're starting to sort of see them very slowly creep into the market, right? But do you have to use them or not? The answer is not really. And when I say not really, if it's there, you really should use it, but if you don't use it, no one's really getting in trouble. Because the way the laws works and the road rules works is that the driver of the vehicle is the one that's supposed to be responsible for everybody in the car, right? So if you're a wheelchair occupant or a normal, like a non-wheelchair occupant, should I say, and you go into the car and you are not wearing a seatbelt, the driver of the vehicle is going to be responsible for that and get in trouble. Not the occupant. In some cases the occupant will, but most of the time it's the driver. And generally for all rules, it's the driver. But when it comes to public transport, it's not like that. So when it comes to public transport, because you've got a very large bus, you've got 50, 60, 70, sometimes 100 people shoved in the bus, the driver is not expected to, I guess, maintain the safety and the legal obligations of all of those passengers. That driver is purely expected to ensure that the road and their interaction with the road is as safe as possible, right? So if there is restraints there and you choose not to use them, they are your choice. So the responsibility to use them sits with you, and if you don't use them, then I guess it's your loss or gain, and that's basically how that works. So if they're there, it's a good idea to use them. We would recommend you to use them. If you don't use them, drivers are not going to get fined. People aren't getting fined in those big public transport buses, that is. But they're there as a safety feature for the community to make sure you are safe, but in the event of an accident, you as the occupant or your friend or colleague or client as the occupant is not flying out of the wheelchair, or the wheelchair is not flying out and injuring other people as well as themselves. All right, so that's the idea behind using those features, is to stop those injuries to yourself and to the other occupants in the vehicle. Okay, so a little bit more of a complex question, and we might expect to have some more follow-up questions from that, and if you do, please send them in. The public transport and the bus scenario is quite a complex one and does require a lot of in-depth analysis, so we're happy to help with all of that. Any questions around that, please keep it coming in, and as I always say, hit that subscribe button down there, otherwise we'll see you next time.